read Woman in the Dunes. The Japanese title would be Suna no Onna. It really just means sand woman.
Okay.
Woman of the sand, basically. And basically, it's about an entomologist who's just out for a vacation in... I think he is supposed to be in the Tottori Desert. So Japan has a desert, if you didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah, so there are, like, sand dunes out there, and he's going out and, like, trying to find some bugs. We have some bugs here.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So there's some pretty pictures throughout this as well. And it's getting late. He comes across the village, which is out in the desert. So it's basically like a normal village, old shacks, like very, very, very poor. And it's kind of like a honeycomb structure, as he explains it, as you get farther and farther into the village. So you have your normal houses, but as you go in, the road kind of goes up, but the houses stay at the same level. So they are actually in these like big holes.
Okay.
And so he asks if there's a place for him to stay, and they're like, right, are you with the government? No? Okay. Sure. Yeah, you can stay at this one woman's place. And he does. And then the next morning, he basically says, like, okay, thank you very much. This was kind of crappy because there's sand everywhere. It's going through the whole house. The house is just falling apart. He steps on, like, the mats, and they're just covered in sand and just wet as well from the mist. So it's not great, but...
Doesn't sound too great.
No. So he's like, alright, I gotta go. I'm gonna keep looking for my bugs. There's some bugs in the desert I want to see if I can find. Maybe make a new discovery of a new type of beetle. Alright, sure, whatever. And they had taken the rope ladder up, which they let him down in, and he's stuck there. So we find out that he has been kidnapped by this village.
Okay, not good.
No.
Less than ideal.
Yes. So, the back of the book says, he awakens to the terrifying realization that the villagers have imprisoned him in a steep-sided sand pit with no means of escape. Stuck there with this random woman. Mm-hmm. So, hence, woman in the dunes.
Of the dunes.
Yep. Come on.
In the dunes.
Yeah. And
that is different, to be fair.
Yes. So, basically, the rest of the book is him trying to figure out how to escape. And, like, at one point, of course he begs them, like, you guys have to let me out. And, like, no, we're not going to do that. Also, at night, you're going to have to dig out all of the sand that's piled up over the day. If you don't do this, like, the house will collapse, and also the dunes might collapse in on you, and you might die. So you better keep doing that. Mm-hmm. So he basically says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let it pile up. I'm going to try to take down like sand from...
Said.
Yeah, I'm going to try to take down sand from like this part, have it fall down, and they give him a newspaper as like a hint. He's like, so they are like listening to me and stuff. But one of the articles in the newspaper is like man crushed by like sand as it falls on him, just as a warning. He tries climbing out, but it's too steep. He tries at one point like binding the woman up. It's like, well, of course they care about her, so let's let's maybe like tie her up and like gag her and all that. Like, all right, we don't care.
You read an erotic thriller.
Haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh wow, okay.
So I think after the first night, she's just completely naked when he wakes up.
Okay.
It's like, okay, this is weird. I'm gonna go. But there's so much sex in this, it feels like.
Oh wow, okay. I was joking. I didn't realize there
No. So, like, they have a big fight, and then it's just kind of like your love story thing, like, where they have the big fight and he falls on her, and then they're just like, alright, let's have sex.
Sure. Happens every time.
Weird. I don't get it. She's a weird one because she doesn't... I don't know what she's about. She just lives in this society, and she just does what she was told. She had a husband before and a child, and they died in some like sandstorm or I guess it was technically a typhoon, but it was with sand that just buried them. So her husband and child all died, and she's basically like, I'm just going to live out my life. I have no interest in going out for a walk. It kind of got boring, so I'm just going to stay here in the sand pit the rest of my life.
Sounds healthy.
Very, very healthy. So yeah, they don't do anything like when he binds her and all that, and him refusing to work means that they're not going to give him any water because they're in the desert. He needs water.
You need water there, yeah.
Yeah, generally. So he gets super delirious. They give him like cigarettes and some cheap alcohol. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, okay, they're coming around. They're seeing like we can win. He keeps having this like false optimism that like they're giving in. But the cigarettes just make his mouth drier.
Yeah,
and then the alcohol, of course, makes
You need more water then.
Yeah. Really dehydrated. And then that's when they have sex. Because he's delirious from the alcohol. Like, this seems
Is
bad.
he abused?
Is he?
They get him drunk and then he gets to have sex? Is he raped?
He's not. No, because he kind of goes on to her.
Okay.
She doesn't do anything to him in that case. He's actually more of a bad person, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
But he's kidnapped, so I don't really blame him for any of this.
Nothing that happens when you've already been kidnapped is ideal.
No. But he's just like, all right, I guess we're just going to have sex. He couldn't technically consent because he was drunk. She wasn't.
And a prisoner.
And a prisoner, yeah, that too. But she just kind of consented to it. She didn't go up to him and say this.
Yeah. Okay, I'll buy it. For now.
I don't think you can technically put her in under any...
It's not her fault.
It's not her fault.
Necessarily. Yeah.
She just gave in. She didn't seduce him or anything.
Yeah, okay.
So, I don't know. That's a morally
I'm always just
area.
like, if the genders were reversed, would you think it was rape? Because if so, then it's still rape, you know?
That's fair. That's totally fair. I guess if it were reversed...
If well, this woman was kidnapped and drugged, essentially, and then she flirted with a guy and he had sex with her. You'd be like, you probably shouldn't have. You know?
I don't know, because like it was entirely her choice for all this. She came on to the guy.
Fair.
In
Well,
that case,
I feel like I'm derailing. I
It is
novel
derailing.
isn't about that, yeah.
Yeah. At one point, he's like, all right, I'm just going to like get these shears, take clothes off, like rip off some of the clothes, make it into like a a grappling hook type thing. And there's sandbags at the top that he sees, so those held the rope ladder when he was brought down.
Yes.
And so he's like, okay, I can definitely get onto that. And he does escape.
Okay.
But then he sneaks out, and he gets caught, basically. Like, dogs find him, and he runs away. And then they kind of get him toward the coast, and he falls into quicksand, basically.
Okay.
So, an actual problem with quicksand, I was not expecting.
I've only seen that in movies.
Yeah.
Cartoons mostly.
Cartoons
and
mostly.
Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, didn't think that was a real thing. And then he calls for help and is like, oh, what are you doing here? How'd you end up there? It's like, you guys basically directed me this way with the cars that you were chasing me in, like this 3-wheeler and stuff. So they tie him up and then drop him back in the hole. It's like, oh, this is pretty bad. And so, yeah, there's a lot of just back and forth, him trying to figure out ways to escape. And he's like, okay, guys, can you at least just let me out for a walk? I'm going crazy in here. It's already been a couple of months. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we could if you have sex with that woman in front of us.
It's getting weird again.
Yeah. Oh, the people in the village are awful.
As an aside, because this also came up in the first book I reviewed, in Tess,
Yeah.
I'm concerned that like 4 months in a row, books we've reviewed have been rapey. I don't like that. And I need to try to not have that next month. Okay.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, sure, fine. Let me just do this. And the woman's like, absolutely not.
Yeah, of course.
What the hell are you talking about? No.
We're not going to do that.
He tries forcing himself on her. This is why I mean he's not a good guy.
Okay.
And he does end up like taking her trousers off, and she's mostly naked out there. But then she beats him up.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, and he's just like, fine. And he just takes it, and she just punches him a ton. And so that kind of ends. Like, okay, well, I'm glad it didn't end with actual rape here. But he tries setting up a bird trap in the back to see if he could like tie a message to a bird. And there's all sorts of things like that. And I guess we're just kind of coming up to the end here. He finds out that the trap is filling up with water because of the way the sand works and all that, some capillary action and stuff. And he's like, so if I do try to like let things like if I do try to not work again and they stop giving me water, well, I'll be fine. Stuff like that. But he's really proud that his thing worked and he's able to get water and all that. And this was there's a movie of this. The movie is really, really good. I mentioned 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, stuff like that.
Nice.
And there's a bit more of this
even
in
better
the movie.
than The Guest?
By audience score, I guess. So basically, we're on the second to last page here.
Okay.
You see it here. At the end of the month, she found herself pregnant. So the woman there. 2 more months went by. Large white birds kept flying over from the east to west for 3 days in succession, and the following day, the lower part of her body was covered with blood, and she complained of violent pain. So one of the villagers, who was said to be a veterinarian among her relatives, diagnosed it as an extrauterine pregnancy, and it was decided to take her to the hospital in the city in the 3-wheeled truck. This happens, I feel like, earlier on in the movie, and it's a really big type of scene, but there's only 2 pages for it here.
That's weird. Yeah.
This is near the end of it.
Over.
So they take her out and to get her help, but they leave the rope ladder there. And I think it's been, a year at this point that he's been been trapped. And then he's like, well, there's no particular need to hurry about escaping. On the 2-way ticket he held in his hand now, the destination and the time of departure were blanks for him to fill in as he wished. In addition, he realized that he was bursting with a desire to talk to someone about the water trap that he built. And if he wanted to talk about it, there wouldn't be better listeners than the villagers. He would end by telling someone, if not today, then tomorrow. He might as well put off his escape until sometime after that.
Okay.
And so he ends the story not escaping. And just being brainwashed by this. They've done it to other people throughout. There was like some postman, like postcard selling guy, who died there. He was already kind of a sickly type person. So, yeah, it's a kind of depressing book. The reason PJ liked it, he's like, this is the most... What is the word? It's a book that made him feel like every page had sand in it. He could feel the sun. He could feel all the things that our main character was feeling.
Could you feel it?
To an extent, yes.
Okay.
I actually see what PJ's talking about with that. So I felt like, there's sand getting into the water. There's sand getting into the soup. There's sand getting into like his ears when he sleeps and his clothes. And it really is just infecting.
So it's effectively written in a way to make you feel that, I guess.
Yeah, it is very, very good in that case. There were definitely some things where it went off topic, and I'm just like, okay, he's having a conversation with himself, and this has nothing to do with any of the story, so it's a bit weird for that. But yeah, it's there's like some nice pictures throughout this as well.
Those are nice.
Actually, one thing about this, complete aside, I feel like some of the pictures in this remind me of some of your artwork at times.
Ah.
Yeah, something like these.
Yeah, those are kind of cool. Yeah, I see it.
Anyway, that is Woman in the Dunes. Does it get a yeah? Yes, it does. It was